Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Portland debate on Measure 26-179, the City of Portland ballot measure that would authorize using general obligation bonds to support affordable housing. I'm Molly Keating, representing the League, and I will be your moderator. The League of Women Voters works to help citizens make informed choices in elections. The goal of this debate is to give you information that will be helpful as you decide upon your vote. Our co-sponsors for this debate are the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, and the Links Incorporated. The Links Incorporated is a volunteer service organization of professional women of color who are committed to strengthening African American communities through public information, education, economic development, and public policy. The mission of the NAACP is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. This debate is being recorded for rebroadcast and online streaming by Metro East Community Media. Funding for the recording was provided by the Multnomah Bar Foundation. Additional funding for our voter forums is provided by Paloma Clothing. Our speakers for this debate are Jessica Larson, who will be speaking in favor of the measure, and Dr. Eric Fruits, who will speak against it. Jessica Larson is the director of the Welcome Home Coalition, which is working to build back Portland's affordable housing infrastructure with homes that are affordable to metro area families. The coalition is the leading organization supporting Measure 26-179. Previously, Jess worked for 8 years at Northwest Pilot Project and for more than 2 years at Cascadia Behavioral Health Care. Her experience has taught her that the greatest challenge to overcoming homelessness is the lack of affordable housing for people with low incomes. Speaking in opposition, Dr. Eric Fruits is president of Economics International Corporation, which provides economic expertise and analysis to clients in the private and public sectors. Dr. Fruits has done project consulting and project management with a wide range of real estate-related industries. He is a former university professor with a PhD in economics and is currently an adjunct faculty member at Portland State University in the Center for Real Estate. Measure 26-179 was placed on the ballot by the Portland City Council. If it passes, it will authorize the city to issue $250 million in bonds to be used for housing that is affordable for families making less than 60% of Portland's median income. Some of the housing would be reserved for families making less than 30% of the median income. This measure would increase tax rates by approximately 42 cents per $1,000 of a property's assessed value. Homeowners with property assessed at $210,000 would see an increase of about $90 in their annual property taxes. We will begin this debate with 4-minute opening statements by each speaker, after which the speakers will answer questions. Audience questions may be written on 3x5 index cards that are being held by members of the League who will be in the aisles. And we would ask you to write any question that you might have legibly, please, and print it. Make your third grade teacher proud. And pass to the League member, and they will pull them together and bring them up here if we have time to. We'll answer as many as we have time to. Okay. So, Ms. Larson, your opening statement is first. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Molly, for that lovely introduction. Thank you to the League, and thank you to everyone who's here tonight to hear about this important important ballot measure coming to Portland voters this November. My name is Jess Larson. I am the director of the Welcome Home Coalition, where I have been heading up this work towards this ballot measure for the past 2 years. As Molly explained, the Welcome Home Coalition is now a coalition of over 140 regional organizations. It includes neighborhood associations, small businesses, healthcare providers, and educators, because housing and our affordable housing crisis is really impacting everyone in every industry in our city today. And of course, we're also the usual suspects working on the front lines of this housing crisis, day in and day out. Organizations like Human Solutions, Transition Projects, Join, and as Molly mentioned, Northwest Pilot Project, which is what brought me to this work in the first place. When I started at Northwest Pilot Project in 2006, I could help a senior with very low income secure a permanently affordable home in just 3 to 4 months. And in that time, I could make sure that they got into shelter immediately that very night that I first met them, make sure that they were no longer sleeping outside, had a roof over their head, a stable and safe place to be, until we made sure that they had a permanently affordable home. And over the time of my tenure at Northwest Pilot Project, as we all do in the professions that we choose, I got better, more connected. I knew how to get through the tricks of the trade and overcome the barriers that so many experience in poverty and in the crisis of homelessness. But the thing I needed most to help my clients who are seniors, vulnerable in this housing crisis with low incomes, was affordable homes. And they've all but gone away in our city because we've run out. And so today, in lobbies like Northwest Pilot Project, Join, Human Solutions, Bradley Angell House, places that are helping families with low incomes, women escaping domestic violence, veterans with disabilities, seniors on Social Security. Today, when a senior or someone in need comes into one of those offices and asks for help, they're given wait lists for shelter that are now months long. And they're given wait lists for housing that are now years long. We simply don't have the tools to meet this growing need for our community members who are most vulnerable and most in crisis. And that's why the Welcome Home Coalition came together, and that is why we spent the last 2 years with policy research, public opinion research, working with our elected leaders to launch this historic and necessary ballot measure. The general obligation bond will build homes that are permanently affordable for families and individuals with our lowest incomes in our community. 3,000 people will have the homes, will call the homes their home, their safe and stable, affordable home at any one time. And over the life of the buildings that we create as a people, as Portland in our neighborhoods, over 60,000 Portlanders will call them home. That's an amazing investment in the long-term affordability, livability, safety of our community. This is a ballot measure that is about who we are as a people, making our city better and safer for everyone. So we encourage you to vote yes on Measure 26-179, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have an opening statement from an opponent of the measure, Dr. Eric Fruits. Dr. Fruits, you also have 4 minutes.
Thank you. And just to make it clear, although I teach sometimes at Portland State, everything I'm saying is my own stuff, nothing representing Portland State University or the Center for Real Estate. I would be the first to admit we do have an housing affordability issue here in Portland. We have a housing affordability issue in Oregon, in the West Coast, and in the United States. It's a problem. It's a big problem. We also have a homeless problem in Portland and Oregon and the United States. Those are 2 related problems. They're not the same problem. Affordability and homelessness are 2 separate issues, but they are closely related. There's also a role for government. Government can do good things to deal with housing affordability. Government has done good things. Government is currently doing good things on housing affordability issues. Unfortunately, this measure is not one of those. And it's mainly because it has very small bang for the buck. The analogy I was thinking of today is if you come home and you buy a can of tuna fish at caviar prices. That's what you're getting here with this measure. The cost of building these projects is roughly double the market price. Other cities are doing similar projects for less money and delivering more services. The measure of good government is services delivered, and this simply doesn't deliver those services. This is a $260 million bond project, and we think of bonds as being free money, but they're not. It's a $260 million tax increase. That's higher taxes for everyone in this room, either through higher rents or through higher home prices, higher property tax assessments. It's more money. It's tax money, and that money isn't free. And that $260 million could be spent, and could be spent in better ways. This measure's been hastily put together. It seems like they just pulled the number out of the air. The projects don't use the leverage that other places do. Denver, for example, has done projects that are promising to spend less money, $100 million less, and deliver 4 times as many services as this measure is. The state of Oregon has programs in place that essentially allow the doubling of money. We aren't doing that. We're not taking advantage of those programs with this measure. It's almost designed to get as small a bang for the buck as possible. And again, it's a tax increase. You're paying for that. And one of the things we need to worry about, too, when we're talking about this tax increase is that Portland Public Schools is going to have another $750 million bond measure on the ballot in May. That's $1 billion in new taxes. And there comes a point where we have to ask, how much can we as Portlanders afford to pony up to pay for these programs? And it's okay to pay higher taxes, but you want to make sure that you're getting a good return on that investment. This measure does not deliver that good return. And we can do what we did with Portland Public Schools. We did something very smart a few years ago. Portland Public Schools came up with a terrible bond measure. It was horrible. And what we did is we sent it back. As voters, we rejected that bond measure. Portland Public Schools came back the next year with a very good bond measure that passed, and passed with flying colors. And that bond measure, that successful one, the one that worked, the one that pencils out, is the one that's rebuilding our schools now. We can do that. Send this one back to the drawing board. They could come up with something better. $260 million is a great start, and it's a good idea to spend that kind of money, but not on this. This measure is just too poorly thought out.
Thank you. In the next part of the debate, we'll ask each speaker to answer questions about the measure. They'll each have 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer each question. And in this first round that we're doing, I'll have a different question for each of the 2 speakers. The first question is for supporter Ms. Larson. The question: what is your response to the criticism that the city spends too much per unit on the housing projects it subsidizes?
Thank you. So it's really important when we're talking about the cost to develop affordable housing that we're comparing apples to apples. There are a lot of numbers floating out there right now in the media about what it's costing to create affordable housing, and there's a lot of different definitions about what is affordable housing. It's important that we're talking about not gap financing or square cost per square foot, for example. But in this case, with the general obligation bond, we're talking about the cost per unit, which is under $200,000 per unit. And that is the cost to build permanent, affordable homes, very, very deeply subsidized, or rather deeply affordable to the tenants who reside in them. So let's make sure we're comparing apples to apples. In the case of Denver, for example, which Dr. Fruits referenced, they're talking about the subsidy per unit. So they're paying for the kitchen sink and a couple of windows. We're building the entire building. We're paying for the lumber, the labor, and the permanent affordability of these permanent homes. And let's remember when we talk about the cost of building affordable housing that we're talking about the cost of doing nothing, which is far higher.
Thank you. Dr. Fruits, your question. Since you oppose this measure, what do you think should or could be done to address the need for affordable housing in Portland?
Well, one of the things with this measure is if you look at the measure carefully, it says that it will build or maintain units. And what that maintain means is you're taking existing units that are already out there, and just turning those into affordable units. In other words, you're taking a unit that exists, moving someone out and moving someone else in. You're not adding any new housing. One of the things that we really need, our biggest problem with affordability, and we talk about affordability not just about low income, but for anyone, middle income and others for affordability, is we simply have more people than we have units. We need to have more units across the board. And this is a start for the low income, but again, they're not getting the bang for the buck. When we say Denver's doing something different, yeah, they are doing something different. They're delivering 4 times as many units for $100 million less. And maybe that something different is something right. Maybe we need to send this measure back and do something that's closer to what Denver's doing so we can actually get that bang for the buck, because we need to help 4,000, 6,000 people rather than just 1,300 families.
Thank you. Our next question is from our audience, and you'll each have 1 minute and 15 seconds to answer this question. Will this measure eliminate homelessness in Portland? If not, what more would be needed? And we'll start with Dr. Fruits.
Well, I don't think this will make a dent in homelessness, and I'm not saying that that's a critique of this measure. I don't think this measure was meant to solve the homelessness problem. As I said earlier, homelessness and affordability are two separate issues. But again, if you look at the ballot measure itself, it says absolutely nothing about homelessness. Homeless individuals are not targeted with this measure. It's not designed to help homeless people. I'm not saying that that's something bad about this measure. It's just a fact of this measure. It may have some impact as the impacts trickle down, but again, it's really not helping that many people. When you have 4,000 or 5,000 people on the streets, and this measure might help 3,000 people, if you take away the people who are just getting shifted from one unit to another, it's going to be less than that. It's really not going to make an impact on homelessness.
Ms. Larson, your answer.
Sure. Well, first, to counter Dr. Fruitz's point, there's actually national evidence that very concretely links affordability to increase in homelessness. National trends now show that an average increase in rents of $100 a month in urban areas is linked to an increase in the experience of homelessness by 15% in those urban areas. And in the last year alone in Portland, rents have gone up over $100 here in our city. So we know that homelessness is increasing because we know that affordability is decreasing, and the solution is more affordable housing. This bond will create homes for 3,000 Portlanders with the very lowest incomes in our community. On any given night, we know that 4,400 people are homeless in our city. They're sleeping in our shelters. They're outside in their They're outside in their cars. They're doubled up with families. They're waiting on long wait lists for affordable homes. So when we create homes for 3,000 Portlanders, we make a very big dent where the need is greatest in our community, and make sure that 3,000 more Portlanders have immediate access to affordable housing.
Thank you. The next question. It's a two-part question. What do you believe are the most important ways for the city government to use taxpayer money? Explain why creating more affordable housing should or should not be an important priority for Portland. Dr. Fruits, you have 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Well, again, the measure of good government is services delivered, and we do have priorities. And the best sign of a politician's priorities is their budgeting priorities. And affordable housing should be one of them. It's also a federal program. We simply don't have the resources to have a huge affordable housing program in the city of Portland. Some of you may recall we actually had a problem maintaining our streets that seems to have gone away as we've moved on to other issues. Streets are still a big problem, right? Crime is still a problem. We still have priorities that are the city's focus. There is a role for the city to play in affordable housing issues where they can partner, where they can leverage federal money, where they can leverage public-private partnerships, where they can do things. This is the city taking $260 million and just becoming landlords without any other owner, without any other leverage in there. It's a very poor bang for the buck. And again, it's just poor services delivered. We could send this back, do it over, do something right that pencils out.
Thank you. Ms. Larson.
Molly, I'm sorry, would you repeat the second part of the question?
Yes. Explain why creating more affordable housing should or should not be an important priority for Portland.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I appreciate that Dr. Fruits brought up the federal government, because for the last 40 years, the federal government has been divesting in our affordable housing supply, which is exactly why we're here in this incredible affordable housing crisis. And it's not just Portland, but it's cities across the country that are struggling with this crisis. And that's exactly why cities across the country are taking action. Portland is only one of dozens of cities with housing on the ballot, cities and counties, just like us, who will be voting in November for affordable homes in their communities, because local communities are stepping up to the plate to take action on this crisis that we can't allow to happen anymore in our cities. We also know that managing the crisis of homelessness is far more costly than building and creating and ensuring affordable rental homes for families who just need an affordable place to live. The cost of one night in the ER exceeds the cost of rent for an entire year for someone with low incomes. We also know that the cost of shelter is about $1,000 a month per person. That's good rent money. That's good money spent in affordable housing. And we all know that everyone would prefer an affordable home.
Thank you. Finally, we have 90 seconds for each side for a closing statement, which may include a... Pardon me? Shall we do another, have time for another question? Okay, great. Okay. This time I'll start with Ms. Larson. It's a question that's addressed to Dr. Fruits, but I'd like to give you each time to answer. Another one, thank you. So we'll start with Ms. Larson, because I started with Dr. Fruits before. The question is, please provide a substantive and quantifiable response to the earlier question of, what do you recommend? And so even though that's addressed to Dr. Fruits, you can address the what do you recommend question.
I recommend that we pass this ballot measure 26179 and make sure that we fund homes for Portlanders who are struggling most, and set a strong and important example for the rest of the state to step up and start taking action on investing in affordable homes, just as we invest in our schools and our parks and our libraries to make sure that our city is safe and accessible to everyone. Affordable homes are the same kind of infrastructure that we need in all of our neighborhoods. And this ballot measure using the general obligation bond to build permanent affordable homes in our communities is exactly the right next step we take.
Thank you.
Well, Portland City Council is adrift in its homeless and affordability ways of addressing the issue. If you look at, for example, on Northwest 18th, there was a plan to put in 160 affordable housing units for low-income seniors. The city of Portland's putting the kibosh on that, or is planning on putting the kibosh on that. They want that to be a vacant building. So on the one hand, they're saying, oh, gee, we want to get rid of this. We don't, because the building is going to be too tall. And this is a problem with all of us as NIMBYs. We don't want to have tall buildings. We love density as long as it's not in our neighborhood. We need that density. If we want to have more units, we need more units, period. Not just affordable. We need middle income and low income. Across the board, we need more units. The city is standing in the way of doing that. If you want concrete stuff, get out of the way. Loosen the design review, and stop us NIMBYs from stopping the development that needs to be done.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Dr. Fruits. Please describe the other programs that you think have better bang for the buck than this measure.
Well, for example, in Denver, I hate to go back to that, but Denver is one of the most recent examples. There's also been a program in Boston that was in place for years that's delivered a much better bang for the buck. The thing is, what's happening here with this measure is it involves the city buying the entire unit. You know, for example, most of you who own homes took out a loan. You leveraged that money. You were able to take the small amount of money you had to buy something bigger than you would have been able to otherwise. This measure doesn't do that. It says we're going to buy the entire thing. We're going to run the entire thing. And I hate to say it, but the city doesn't have a deep bench of talent to run stuff. We've seen a lot of failures in the city. For example, the street fee is only going to pave 2 miles of road. You know, that's not bang for the buck. The city is terrible at delivering bang for the buck. That's why you need that private-public interaction, because they can provide the expertise to leverage that, not just the money, but also the skills to deliver services in a better way.
Thank you. Ms. Larson, would you like to weigh in on that?
Absolutely. I think it's fascinating that Dr. Fruits, an economist, compares affordable housing with the way we build our own, or we buy our own homes as employed, able-bodied citizens of the city, because affordable housing is not a real estate investment. Affordable homes don't generate revenue. They don't build equity. Affordable homes don't cover the costs, the rents that tenants in affordable homes pay don't cover the cost of the building insurance and turning the lights on in the hallway. And that is why we need to make sure that we as a public invest in building these buildings. It's the same reason why we build our libraries, parks, and our schools, because they don't generate revenue. There's no private incentive to develop these community infrastructure buildings that make our city better for everyone. And so it's incorrect to compare this affordable housing to how we buy our homes as individual citizens.
Thank you. Now each side will have 90 seconds for a closing statement, which may include a rebuttal. And we'll start with the supporter, Ms. Larson.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here again. This is a really critical opportunity for us as Portland to step up to the plate and really do what's right for our community members who are struggling most in Portland: seniors with low incomes, veterans with disabilities, families working low-wage jobs, and we all know there are no $500 apartments left to rent on Craigslist. And that is why these community members are in our shelters, waiting for shelters, waiting for affordable homes. So we need to make sure we have more affordable homes in our community, and the only way we make sure we have enough affordable homes is by investing in them. As Dr. Fruits has mentioned, he's worried about the bang for the buck. Well, let me assure you that this is simply what it costs to build permanent infrastructure, and these homes will be permanently affordable. The rents will cover the costs of operating the building so that we as a public don't have to reinvest in these homes. Furthermore, the limitation on leveraging the funds is also an opportunity, because those funds that we leverage are still on the table, and they will still continue to do the great work of our affordable housing development that our city is already doing. So essentially, we're doubling down on our efforts when we pass this ballot measure here in Portland, and we think it's exactly the right thing, the right time, and the right way to move Portland forward. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. Dr. Fruits, your closing statement, please. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Remember, this is a $260 million tax increase. We're issuing bonds that are going to be paid out of our property taxes. And so we need to be good stewards of that tax money. And we found with the PPS construction bonds that when you hand PPS and the city government a blank check, they treat it like a blank check. But when you send them back to do something over, to pencil things out, things pencil out, and they can come back with something better. And that's what we're asking them to do here. You know, if you look at the ballot measure, there's not a single unit that's identified. There's not a single building that's identified. There's not a single project identified. You haven't heard about a single project from Ms. Larson. It's because we don't know what there is. There's nothing. They haven't even sketched out a single plan of what they're actually going to do with the money that you can point to and say, that's where it's going to be built. That's who's going to be helped. We don't know that. It's a blank check, and it doesn't deliver in the services the way it should. Send it back. Just say, no, let's do a do-over, do it right, and I'm sure we'll pass it next time around. We're in a hurry, but we're not in that big of a hurry.
Thank you. That's all the time we have. Thank you to our speakers for participating in our debate. We also thank Metro East Community Media for recording and broadcasting this debate. Please check your program and consult the League's website, which is lwvpdx.org, for dates and times of the rebroadcasts. Our co-sponsors are the NAACP and the Links Incorporated. This program is supported by funding from the Multnomah Bar Foundation and Paloma Clothing. The League of Women Voters also produces a neutral voters guide, which includes thorough coverage of all the state ballot measures and local city and county measures as well. The League's voters guides are free and available at the county elections offices in branches of Multnomah County libraries. You'll also be able to find the voters guide online at lwvpdx.org. Once again, that's lwvpdx.org. Remember that Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Ballots will be mailed to voters on or about October 20th and must be delivered to an official drop-off site anywhere in Oregon no later than 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 8th, or mailed to arrive by that date. Postmarks do not count. The last day to register to vote is October 18th. The League's next public meeting will be November 14th at 7 o'clock p.m. here at the Multnomah County Building. The topic will be, quote, "Election methods. Is there a better way to vote?" Please check our website for details. This is Molly Keating for the League of Women Voters of Portland. Please be informed and remember that your vote is very important. Thank you for watching our debate on ballot measure 26-179.